The ambulance doors slammed shut with a deafening clang, leaving only Oliver and Elijah inside the sterile swaying vehicle racing through the rain-slicked streets of New York City. In that moment of chaos and pain, Elijah did something neither of them could ever take back. Oliver lay on the narrow gurney, his head throbbing from the car crash they had just survived, his eyes half closed as the sirens wailed outside. He had been driving them back from a weekend hike upstate when a truck swerved into their lane. Now the world felt upside down, literally and figuratively. Elijah knelt beside him, his hands trembling, as he pressed a cloth to the cut on Oliver's forehead. "Stay with me, buddy," he whispered, his voice cracking in a way Oliver had never heard before. The paramedics had been delayed at another scene, so it was just the two of them locked in this metal box hurtling toward the hospital. Oliver wanted to speak, to tell Elijah he was okay, but something in the air kept him silent, pretending to drift in and out of consciousness. Elijah's breathing grew ragged. "God, Oliver, if you don't make it, I swear." He stopped, swallowed hard, then leaned closer, his face inches from Oliver's. "I've been in love with you since freshman year at NYU. Not as your best friend. As more. I tried to fight it with all those girls, the dates, the lies, but it's always been you." Before Oliver could process the words, Elijah pressed his lips gently to Oliver's in a kiss so soft and desperate it stole the breath from both of them. It lasted only seconds, but it shattered everything Oliver thought he knew about his life. The ambulance hit a bump, and Elijah pulled back, his eyes wide with regret and fear. Oliver kept his eyes closed, his heart hammering so loudly he was sure Elijah could hear it. How could this be happening? Elijah, the guy who had dated half the cheer squad in college, the one who always joked about settling down with a wife and kids in the suburbs. Oliver had buried his own feelings for years, convinced they were one-sided, convinced that admitting them would ruin the only real friendship he had. Now here they were, bloodied and broken, and the truth had finally spilled out in the worst possible way. The rest of the ride passed in stunned silence for Oliver, his mind replaying every moment they had shared, the late-night talks, the shared apartment in Brooklyn, the way Elijah always saved the last slice of pizza for him. By the time they reached the emergency bay, Oliver had decided he would pretend he never heard a word. He couldn't risk losing Elijah, not like this. The doors flew open again, and real paramedics rushed in, but the damage was already done. Oliver was wheeled inside under bright fluorescent lights, his body aching but his heart in absolute turmoil. Elijah followed close behind, refusing to leave his side even as nurses tried to shoo him away. "I'm family," Elijah insisted, his voice steady now though his hands still shook. Oliver almost laughed at the irony. Family. That was what they had always called each other. But after that kiss, nothing felt the same. In the examination room, doctors poked and prodded, confirming a mild concussion, a few bruised ribs, and nothing life-threatening. Oliver finally opened his eyes, fully meeting Elijah's gaze across the room. Elijah looked exhausted, his dark hair matted with sweat, his blue eyes filled with unspoken questions. "You okay?" he asked softly when the doctors stepped out. Oliver nodded, forcing a weak smile. "Yeah, thanks for riding with me." The words felt hollow. Inside he was screaming. That kiss had unlocked a door he had nailed shut years ago. He remembered the first time he met Elijah in the dorms back in 2018. Oliver had just moved from a small town in Ohio where being gay meant hiding in plain sight. Elijah from California seemed so confident, so straight. They bonded over bad cafeteria food and late-night video games. Over the years, they became inseparable. Oliver dated a few girls to keep up appearances while secretly nursing a crush he never dared name. Elijah did the same, or so Oliver thought. Now everything was different. The nurse returned with discharge papers and pain meds. "You'll need someone to watch you tonight," she said. Elijah stepped forward without hesitation. "I've got him." Oliver wanted to protest, but the thought of being alone with his swirling thoughts terrified him more. They took a cab back to their shared apartment in Williamsburg, the city lights blurring past like his emotions. Elijah helped him inside, settling him on the couch with a blanket and a glass of water. "You sure you don't remember anything from the ride?" Elijah asked, carefully, sitting on the coffee table across from him. Oliver hesitated, then lied. "Just the crash. Everything else is fuzzy." Relief flickered across Elijah's face, but also something else, pain maybe. "Good. Get some rest, man. I'll be right here." As Oliver closed his eyes again, he knew sleep would not come easy. That kiss replayed on loop, and with it came the terrifying realization that he had feelings for Elijah, two feelings that could no longer stay buried. The night stretched on the city, humming outside, while inside their little world had cracked wide open. Oliver wondered how long he could keep pretending before the truth demanded its own ambulance ride out of the shadows. Morning light filtered through the blinds, casting stripes across the living room floor where Oliver had finally dozed off sometime after 3 a.m. He woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of Elijah moving quietly in the kitchen. His head still throbbed, but the real pain was deeper, an ache of uncertainty that made every breath feel heavy. Elijah appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs, his usual easy smile strained at the edges. "How's the patient?" he asked, handing over the black coffee Oliver liked, strong, no sugar. Oliver sat up, slowly wincing at the pull in his ribs. "Better. Thanks for staying." They had shared this apartment for 4 years after college, both working in the city, Oliver as a graphic designer for a small ad firm, Elijah as a junior associate at a law office downtown. Their lives had meshed perfectly until yesterday. Elijah sat on the arm of the couch, running a hand through his messy hair. "Look, about the crash, I'm sorry, I was driving too fast." "If I hadn't," Oliver cut him off. "It wasn't your fault. The truck driver was the idiot." Silence settled between them, thick and uncomfortable. Oliver wanted to ask about the kiss, wanted to scream that he had heard every word, but the fear of what came next kept his mouth shut. Instead, he changed the subject. "My mom called the hospital last night. She's flying in from Ohio this afternoon. Wants to make sure I'm okay." Elijah's face tightened. Oliver's family was the picture of small-town conservative values, church every Sunday, potlucks, and subtle comments about finding a nice girl. They adored Elijah, though always calling him the son they never had. "I'll pick her up from the airport," Elijah offered quickly. "You rest." Oliver nodded, grateful yet dreading the performance that would be required. By noon his mother Margaret arrived, suitcase in hand, her face pale with worry. She hugged Oliver tightly, then turned to Elijah with the same warmth. "You're a lifesaver, taking care of my boy like this." Oliver watched them interact, the easy banter, the inside jokes, and felt a fresh wave of guilt. If they knew the truth, the kiss, the confession, everything would shatter. That evening the 3 of them ordered Thai food and watched old movies on the couch, just like always. But Oliver caught Elijah stealing glances at him when Margaret wasn't looking, glances full of questions and longing. Later, when his mother went to bed in the guest room, Elijah lingered in the hallway. "Oliver, we should talk," he whispered. Oliver's pulse spiked. "Not now. She's here." Elijah nodded, but the hurt in his eyes was unmistakable. The next few days blurred into a routine of doctor visits, pain meds, and careful conversations. Oliver's concussion healed slowly, but his mind raced constantly. He replayed their college years, the nights Elijah crashed on his couch after breakups, the way he always defended Oliver against homophobic jokes at parties. Had it all been a cover? One afternoon, while Margaret was out shopping, Elijah cornered him in the kitchen. "I meant what I said in the ambulance," he said, voice low and urgent. "I'm done hiding Oliver. But I get it if you don't feel the same. Just tell me and we'll go back to how things were." Oliver stared at the floor, his throat tight. He wanted to say, "Yes, I feel it too," but the words stuck. Instead he mumbled, "I need time." Elijah stepped back, nodding though his shoulders slumped. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." That night Oliver lay awake, listening to the rain outside, wondering if time would fix anything or only make the truth harder to ignore. His mother noticed the tension, of course, asking if everything was okay between the boys. Oliver lied again, saying it was just the accident aftermath. But inside he was cracking. The identity he had hidden for 28 years was demanding to be seen, and Elijah's confession had lit the match. By the end of the week Margaret flew home, reassured, but Oliver knew the real storm was just beginning. Work called him back, the ad agency needing designs for a new campaign. Elijah returned to the law firm, but the distance between them grew even as they shared the same space. Small things changed: the way Elijah avoided brushing past him in the narrow hallway, the careful way he said goodnight. Oliver felt the loss like a bruise he couldn't stop pressing. Then came the first real test. At the office his boss praised a new logo but added casually, "You and Elijah still roommates? Guy like that must have girls lining up." Oliver forced a laugh, but the comment landed like a punch. That evening he found Elijah on the couch staring at his phone. "Rough day?" Oliver asked. Elijah looked up, his eyes red-rimmed. "My dad called. Wants me home for Christmas. Said it's time I brought a girlfriend to meet the family." The words hung heavy. Oliver sat beside him for the first time in days, their shoulders almost touching. "What did you tell him?" Elijah shrugged. "The usual lie." In that moment Oliver saw the same fear. He carried the fear of disappointing everyone who loved them. He reached out, hesitantly placing a hand on Elijah's arm. It was the first voluntary touch since the ambulance. Elijah didn't pull away. Instead, he covered Oliver's hand with his own. "I'm scared too," Oliver admitted finally, his voice barely above a whisper. It wasn't the full confession, but it was a crack in the wall. Elijah smiled sadly. "Then we're scared together." The night ended without more words, but something had shifted. The misunderstanding that Oliver had created by pretending to forget was starting to unravel. He still wasn't ready to come out, not with his family's expectations looming and Elijah's career on the line at a conservative firm, but the seed of possibility had been planted. As he fell asleep, Oliver realized the ambulance ride had not just saved his body, it had rescued a truth they both needed to face. The journey ahead would be messy, full of confrontations and choices, but for the first time he wasn't facing it alone. Weeks turned into months, and the secret between Oliver and Elijah simmered like a pot left too long on the stove. They never spoke directly about the kiss again, but it colored every interaction, the lingering looks, the careful distance, the occasional brush of fingers when passing the remote. Oliver threw himself into work designing campaigns for brands that preached diversity while he hid his own truth. Elijah buried himself in case files at the firm, climbing the ranks but coming home exhausted and quiet. Their friendship held, but it had stretched thin like an old rubber band ready to snap. Then came Thanksgiving. Elijah's parents invited them both to their home, in Connecticut, the sprawling house decorated with tasteful lights and a tree that smelled of pine. Oliver had visited before, always as the best friend, never as anything more. This year felt different. On the train ride up, Elijah stared out the window, his jaw tight. "They're going to ask about my love life again," he said finally. Oliver nodded, understanding. "We'll handle it." The weekend started smoothly, Mrs. Bennet fussing over Oliver like her own son, Mr. Bennet clapping Elijah on the back, talking about the law firm and future partnerships. But on Thanksgiving night, after too much wine, the questions came. "So Elijah, any special girl yet?" his mother asked, smiling expectantly. Elijah froze, his fork halfway to his mouth. Oliver jumped in. "He's been focused on work, you know how it is." The lie tasted bitter. Later, in the guest room they shared, Elijah paced the floor. "I can't keep doing this, Oliver. Pretending. It's killing me." Oliver sat on the edge of the bed, heart racing. "What do you want me to say? That I feel the same? That the kiss in the ambulance woke something in me I've been running from since college?" The words tumbled out before he could stop them. Elijah stopped pacing, his eyes locking onto Oliver's. "Do you?" Oliver swallowed hard. "Yes. God, yes. But my family, your career, what if we lose everything?" Elijah crossed the room in 2 strides, pulling Oliver to his feet. Their foreheads touched, breathing the same air. "Then we lose it together. I'd rather have you than a fake life." They didn't kiss that night, but they held each other until dawn, talking about fears and dreams, the life they might build if they were brave enough. Back in New York, the conversation opened a door. They started dating in secret, stolen moments in the apartment, quiet dinners in Brooklyn restaurants where no one knew them, walks in Central Park at dusk, holding hands only when no one was looking. Oliver's art flourished, inspired by the new emotions flooding his chest. Elijah's confidence grew even as he dodged questions at work. But cracks appeared. Oliver's younger sister called one evening from Ohio. "Mom thinks you're acting weird. Everything okay with Elijah?" The suspicion stung. Oliver lied again, but the guilt grew heavier. Then came the first real misunderstanding. At a work holiday party for Elijah's firm, a female colleague flirted openly with him, laughing too loud, touching his arm. Oliver watched from across the room, jealousy flaring hot and unexpected. Later, in the cab home, he snapped. "You seem to enjoy that attention." Elijah stared at him, hurt flashing in his eyes. "It's my job to be friendly, Oliver. You know that." The argument escalated, words sharp with insecurity. Oliver accused Elijah of still hiding behind the straight act. Elijah fired back that Oliver was the one too scared to tell his family. They went to bed angry, the first real fight since the ambulance. The next morning Elijah left early, leaving a note. "I love you, but I need you to meet me halfway." Oliver stared at the paper, tears blurring the ink. He realized then that love wasn't just the kiss or the confessions, it was the daily choice to fight for each other despite the world pushing back. He spent the day alone, sketching Elijah's face over and over, trying to capture the strength and vulnerability that had drawn him in years ago. When Elijah returned that evening, Oliver met him at the door. "I'm sorry. I'm scared, but I'm in this all the way." They reconciled with a real kiss, this time slow and full of promise, no pretense, no audience. The relationship deepened after that. They spent Christmas, just the two of them, in the apartment, exchanging small gifts, a new sketchbook for Oliver, a watch engraved with their initials for Elijah. For the first time Oliver felt seen, truly seen. But society wasn't done testing them. In January, Elijah's firm announced a big case involving a conservative client who made homophobic remarks in meetings. Elijah came home furious. "I stayed quiet, Oliver. I hate myself for it." Oliver pulled him close. "You don't have to stay quiet forever. We'll figure it out." That night they made plans, tentative ones, about coming out to family first, then friends, then maybe the world. The internal crisis Oliver had carried for so long began to lift, replaced by a quiet determination. He started therapy in secret, learning to unpack the shame planted in his small-town upbringing. Elijah supported him, attending sessions when invited, listening without judgment. Their bond grew stronger, forged in the fire of honesty. Yet Oliver knew the biggest confrontation loomed. His parents planned a visit in March for his birthday. The thought kept him awake at night. What if they rejected him? What if they rejected Elijah, the man they had welcomed as family? Elijah sensed the fear and held him tighter. "Whatever happens, we face it together." As February ended, the city thawed, and so did Oliver's resolve. The journey from best friends to lovers had been paved with misunderstandings and sacrifices, but each step brought them closer to the men they were meant to be. The ambulance ride that started it all felt like a lifetime ago, yet its echo still guided them forward into an uncertain but hopeful future. March arrived with a late snowstorm blanketing New York in white, and Oliver's parents flew in for his 29th birthday. The apartment smelled of fresh coffee and anxiety as Oliver and Elijah prepared dinner together, their movements synchronized from months of secret domesticity. Margaret and Robert arrived, smiling, suitcases rolling behind them. Hugs were exchanged, laughter filled the small space, but Oliver's stomach twisted with every innocent question. "You boys still getting along so well?" his father asked, clapping Elijah on the shoulder. Elijah smiled tightly. "Better than ever, sir." The lie sat heavy between them. That night, after his parents went to bed, Oliver paced the living room. Elijah watched from the couch. "We don't have to do this tonight," he said softly. Oliver stopped. "I can't keep lying to them. Not anymore." The next morning over breakfast, Oliver cleared his throat, his hands shaking under the table. "Mom, Dad, there's something I need to tell you." The words poured out the truth about who he was, the love he felt for Elijah, the kiss in the ambulance that changed everything. Silence crashed down. His mother's face paled, his father's jaw clenched. "This is a phase, son," Robert said finally, voice cold. "You've been through a trauma with that crash. Elijah, you're a good friend, but this," he gestured between them. "This isn't right." Elijah stood, his voice steady. "I love your son, sir. This isn't a phase." Margaret started crying. "We raised you in the church, Oliver. What will people say?" The confrontation escalated, accusations flying, disappointment thick in the air. Oliver's parents left early, cutting the visit short. The door closed behind them and Oliver sank to the floor, sobbing. Elijah knelt beside him, holding him through the storm. "They'll come around," he whispered, but doubt lingered in his own eyes. The betrayal cut deep, not from strangers but from the people who were supposed to love him unconditionally. Work became Oliver's escape, but even their rumors started after someone at the firm saw them holding hands on the subway. His boss pulled him aside. "We support diversity here, but keep it professional." The subtle prejudice stung. Elijah faced his own battle at the law firm. The big conservative client demanded he lead the case, and when Elijah hesitated, citing personal reasons, pressure mounted. If you can't represent our values, we'll find someone who can, the partner warned. Elijah came home one night and told Oliver he was considering quitting. I won't hide who I am for a paycheck. Oliver argued against it, fearing financial ruin, but Elijah's mind was made up. The sacrifice was real. They moved to a smaller place in Queens, cutting costs and leaning on each other harder than ever. Misunderstandings arose again when Oliver's sister sided with their parents, sending angry texts calling Elijah a bad influence. Elijah read one over Oliver's shoulder, and the hurt in his eyes was palpable. Maybe I am ruining your life, he said quietly. Oliver pulled him close. You're saving it. Spring brought tentative hope. Elijah started freelancing, taking cases that aligned with his values. Oliver's designs won a small award, and the recognition boosted his confidence. They attended their first Pride event together, hand in hand, nervous but proud, marching through the streets surrounded by people who understood. The experience was liberating, yet the family silence weighed on them. Then came the turning point. Oliver's mother called late one night, her voice soft. I've been reading, talking to people at church. I don't understand everything, but I miss my son. It wasn't full acceptance, but it was a crack. Elijah's parents were slower to come around, but when they saw how happy their son was, the walls began to crumble. The growth was slow, painful, but real. Oliver learned to stand tall in his identity. Elijah learned to balance ambition with authenticity. Their love deepened through the trials, becoming the anchor they both needed. As summer approached, they planned a small trip upstate to the place where the crash happened. Standing by the roadside, Oliver turned to Elijah. Thank you for that ambulance ride. For being brave when I couldn't. Elijah smiled, kissing him softly under the open sky. We both got brave eventually. The journey wasn't over, but they had chosen each other again, and that choice was rewriting their future one honest day at a time. Summer brought longer days and harder truths. Oliver and Elijah's relationship had survived the family storm, but new pressures emerged from within. Oliver started having panic attacks at work, the fear of being truly seen sometimes overwhelming him despite the progress. Elijah noticed and suggested they see a couples counselor, something neither had imagined needing. The sessions were raw, peeling back layers of internalized shame and societal conditioning. I still catch myself wondering if I'm enough for you, Oliver admitted one evening, staring at the ceiling. Elijah took his hand. You're everything. But I get it, I have days too where I wonder if I'm asking too much of you. The honesty strengthened them, but it also exhausted them. Then came the betrayal neither saw coming. Elijah's old college girlfriend resurfaced on social media, posting old photos with captions hinting at what could have been. She tagged Elijah, and the comments flooded in from mutual friends questioning his sudden distance. Oliver saw the posts first, and the jealousy that had once been a spark now roared into an argument. Did you ever love her more than me? He demanded, voice rising. Elijah's face fell. Never. But she was safe. Easy. You were the one who terrified me because you mattered. The misunderstanding cleared after hours of talking, but the damage lingered. Elijah blocked her, and they both unfollowed the toxic circle. Work life added another layer. Oliver's firm landed a major client, a progressive brand that wanted a campaign celebrating LGBTQ+ stories. The irony wasn't lost on him. When he pitched ideas drawn from his own life, his boss pulled him aside. This is gold, but are you sure you want to attach your name? The subtle warning echoed old fears. Elijah quit his firm entirely, starting his own small practice focused on civil rights cases. The financial strain was real. They ate ramen some nights and skipped vacations, but the freedom was worth it. Elijah won his first case defending a young gay man fired for his identity, and the victory felt like personal redemption. Oliver celebrated with him at a quiet rooftop dinner overlooking the city. I'm proud of you, he said, raising a glass. Elijah smiled. Couldn't have done it without you. Fall arrived, and with it a family breakthrough. Oliver's parents invited them both to Ohio for Thanksgiving, this time with a note saying, "We're trying." The visit was awkward at first, stiff conversations and careful glances, but by the end of the weekend Margaret hugged Elijah tightly. You make my son happy. That's enough for now. Robert shook his hand. Take care of him. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress, the kind that came from sacrifice and patience. Back in New York, they faced one final internal crisis. Elijah received an offer to join a prestigious firm in California, one that promised partnership but required relocation. "We'd have to start over," he said, showing Oliver the email. Oliver's heart sank. His life was in New York, his budding career, his support network. The decision loomed for weeks, arguments flaring and cooling. In the end, Elijah turned it down. "My home is wherever you are." The choice cemented their commitment. As winter approached, they reflected on the year that began in an ambulance. Oliver had grown from a closeted man terrified of his truth to someone who designed pride campaigns with his name attached. Elijah had sacrificed stability for integrity and found deeper purpose. Their love had been tested by misunderstandings, family rejection, and personal doubts, but each challenge forged them stronger. One snowy evening they sat by the window watching flakes fall. "Remember when I thought I could forget that kiss?" Oliver asked. Elijah laughed softly. "Remember when I thought one kiss would be enough?" They leaned into each other, the city quiet around them. The journey of growth wasn't complete. There would always be new battles, but they faced them as equals, partners in every sense. The awakening that started in the back of that ambulance had led them to a life neither had dared imagine, one built on truth, courage, and the kind of love that refused to stay hidden. The new year dawned crisp and full of possibility. Oliver and Elijah had weathered every storm together and now stood on the other side, stronger, more themselves than ever. They celebrated with a small gathering in their Queens apartment, inviting close friends who had supported them through the coming out process. Laughter filled the room, stories were shared, and for the first time Oliver introduced Elijah publicly as his partner without hesitation. The words felt natural, powerful. Work flourished for both. Oliver's campaign for the progressive brand went viral, earning industry awards and opening doors to bigger projects. Elijah's solo practice expanded, taking on cases that made real change in the city. They even started volunteering at a local LGBTQ youth center, sharing their story with teenagers navigating their own identities. The impact was profound. Watching young faces light up with hope reminded them why the fight mattered. Yet life wasn't without its final tests. Oliver's father had a health scare in spring, requiring a trip back to Ohio. This time the visit was different, no hiding, no tension. Robert pulled Elijah aside one afternoon. "I was wrong about a lot of things. Thank you for standing by my son." The reconciliation brought tears and healing. Elijah's family followed suit, inviting them to California for a summer visit, where his parents finally embraced the relationship fully. The acceptance from both sides felt like closing a circle that began in crisis. As autumn returned, they took a trip back to the upstate road where the accident happened. Standing hand in hand, they looked at the guardrail still scarred from that day. "That ambulance saved more than my life," Oliver said quietly. "It saved us." Elijah turned to him, eyes shining. "It gave me the courage to stop running." They kissed there on the roadside, a gentle reaffirmation of everything they had become. Back home, they made plans for the future, a bigger apartment, maybe a dog, talks of marriage when the time felt right. The internal conflicts that once tormented Oliver had transformed into quiet confidence. Elijah's sacrifices had led to a career that aligned with his values. Their relationship had evolved from secret longing to open partnership built on trust, communication, and shared growth. Friends marveled at how far they had come, from best friends to soulmates. One quiet evening, as snow began to fall again, Oliver looked at Elijah across the dinner table. "I never imagined this life when those doors closed on us in the ambulance." Elijah smiled, reaching for his hand. "Neither did I. But I wouldn't trade a single moment." Their story wasn't a fairy tale, it was real, with scars and lessons, and the kind of love that chose to fight every day. As the year ended, they stood on their balcony, overlooking the city lights, the same skyline that had witnessed their beginning. The journey of two men who learned to love openly had reshaped not only their lives but the lives they touched along the way. True love always conquers prejudice? True or false?